over the last several weeks, I'm just going to give a quick intro here, some context for the discussion today if you're new. If you are not new, but you want to go back to listen to a lot of the messages, it's been a great series. It actually started at the end of May, so it's been a long time. But really interesting how we can pull out just this simple concept of a table, having people welcome at our table. We've been exploring what it means to sit at the table with Jesus, not just as guests, but as hosts, not just to be fed ourselves, even though everyone loves a good table where we get fed, but to feed others, to participate, not just receive grace for ourselves, but to embody it for others. And at the heart of this whole series has been some deeply human questions that hopefully you've been able to reflect on. What am I bringing to the table? Right? Is it enough? Who's welcome at my table? Is making space at my table a priority? Am I too busy, too tired, too self-focused to actually do something simple that Jesus did? Jesus did a lot of things, but he invites us to extend his table. And we've seen characters from the Bible wrestle with these questions when Jesus told the disciples to feed the crowd of 5,000. The disciples looked at their hands, they looked at the 5 loaves, the 2 fish, and they saw and they felt the gap between the need of the people who needed to be fed and their ability. But in the kingdom of God, we know that lack isn't the last word, that Jesus called us to surrender. And he's the one who turns not enough into abundance. He reminds us that presence is greater than performance. And that brings us here again to the table, not just the table that Jesus invites us to, though we are so glad that he welcomes us to the table, but the one that we are called to extend, to reach the unreached, to bring church to the unchurched, and to bring love to the unloved. So this series hasn't just been about what Jesus can do for us, it's about what he empowers us to give to others. So as we turn to our panel discussion, I want to invite up the guests, Brandy. No, I'm kidding. Kim and Jackie and BJ. You're more than welcome, Brandy. You're always welcome at my table. Come along. And let's just put up, do we have any slides, Johnny? Do we have slides? Yes, we've got it. Okay, sorry. Well, looking at the back looks different. I'm good. Real quick, let's put up the one that says Joe's laptop. That'll be my screen. What's your biggest struggle when inviting others to your table? And if you scan this QR code, everybody get your phone out. This is a good excuse. Get your phone out, get your phone out. Scan this QR code and write down 1 or 2 words that resonate with you. I'll give you that microphone. You guys might have to share. Jared, you good with these microphones? Sweet. What's your biggest struggle when inviting others to your table? And in a second, we will look at those answers. You have a couple of minutes, but I just want to start with the panel. What has welcoming people to your table looked like through different seasons of life? BJ, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's. I was reflecting on this question, and I was thinking about like even where the heart for having people, inviting people in my life around the table, into my home, things like that. And the first thing that came to mind was, well, it was something that was cultivated in my home as a child. It was something that was demonstrated. My mom, many of you know my mom, Linda. She was famous for like literally picking people up off the street and bring them to our house. Like all of a sudden, there'd be a family. She's like, yeah, they were stranded on the side of the road. They were going to go to McDonald's. So I said, come over to my house, right? And they spent the day with us, and then they were off, and we never saw them again. Or there'd be somebody in need, or somebody in our church that maybe didn't have somewhere to go for the holidays, and there was always an open a space for the table to be able to embrace them, for them to spend time with us. And so I just saw this in front of me, funny enough, my dad wouldn't be as much like an extrovert that way, but he accepted it, and even though maybe something he wouldn't put words to. So that was the earliest seasons for sure, seeing some of that for sure. And then another area would have been singleness. I think that's something that's overlooked a little bit, is a time of singleness. I didn't meet Alyssa until I was 20. I hadn't dated for a number of years. And so I think taking captive of like, man, and I was in ministry, so I had some of these like missional mindsets, but it wasn't just me and my own. It was, how can I reach out to those other singles, other people in need, and how can I be intentional about creating space? So I had a couple friends that we met for breakfast early mornings, like once a month, once every couple weeks, to be able to spend time together, to be able to pray for one another, even accountability, things like that, or create other spaces of group gatherings. We had a group that we would meet together with singles, and a number of them ended up getting married, so it was a good space too. But I think in that singleness, so for those of you that are in a single, I think there's a real opportunity that we overlooked there. And then obviously marriage has created a space where we really like to care for our friends' kids. I think is something we've kind of really grabbed for whatever reason. It's like we like to take our friends' kids and create a space for the parents to go and do, or another safe space for those kids to spend and have fun, and we just try to create spaces of fun.
Yeah, and I think when Kim and I were speaking together, just in preparation for this, when thinking about what has welcoming to your table looked like, we can say, what does it look like right now? But what does it look like for you, Kim, through different seasons? You've just, you, for many of in the room know that you were a doctor for decades and are recently in a retirement phase. What has hosting people, welcoming people to your table looked like in those different seasons?
I was also blessed by a father who was able to make everybody feel welcome to his house. And so the value of doing that, inviting people. But I also grew up in a church tradition that very much focused on community and service to other people. And so I will say that I always was like feeling like I should. Like, I should be doing this, I should be inviting people over, I should be the stranger inviting them into my house. And I have to say that some of that's very difficult to just live out life. And so I was thinking about some of the crazy things that I've done. And so I'm not really recommending these, but just so you know, some of the crazy
How crazy
things
are we
that
talking,
I've done.
Kim?
Yeah. So when we were first married, we moved into our new house and had a baby all within the span of a week. And the neighbor girl came over, and about a week after I had a newborn, okay? So she comes over and she knocks on the door and says, "Do you have any kids I can play with? I just moved into the area." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, honey, I just have a newborn." And she kind of barged her way into the house. And that was about a 10-year relationship. That what was interesting about that, this child had no sense of boundaries that were appropriate. And I found that God was teaching me how to learn to set some appropriate boundaries without totally excluding the person. And so I think that, for me, the value in kind of opening my home and my house to other people is the things God reveals to me about what's in my heart and where I need to grow and learn how to be better with it. We also had some college students that were going around. They knocked on our door and they said, "Can we stay at your house?" And so to just... They were summer job, selling books, and they were looking for a cheap place to stay. And at that point, we had a couple of children and let them live in our basement for the summer. So those things create all kinds of challenges, but one of the rewarding things of that is probably 10 years later, one of those boys came back and said something to my husband about how meaningful it was to stay there. So I think the investment that you do, you might not see until years down the line. We have been involved with small groups from the point that before we were married, and have seen the value in that in terms of growing spiritually ourselves, but also just connecting to other people and investing in other people. And I can say, like, the group that we were part of before we got married, we invited all of them to our wedding, and it was just meaningful. Those people that had seen us through some things to be there to celebrate with us. And then when we moved here, we got involved in small groups. Some of the relationships that are still very precious to us are from those small group relationships. And then we have led small groups. And those have their challenges too, when you have a house full of kids and the adults are trying to meet, and then they find your teaching tapes on gynecological exams and start viewing them without your knowledge, but so it takes some flexibility, but and willingness to have your house messed up, things broken.
Yep.
Those things don't matter as much as the people. So, and at this point, I would say we find ourselves at a season of life when I thought we would be able to invest a whole lot more into other people. Sorry. And we're trying to learn the grace of just walking in God's mercy day to day, and then being open to people helping us, and to just being present with people when they need it, because like it's hard right now to maybe do some of that inviting just because life seems a little crazy for us. But I think mostly what people want is for you to just be present and interested in them, and ask them questions about who they are.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's enough.
Well, I think it's real, right? Different seasons, we have time, we have capacity, but I love what Kim said. It's about being present and being and noticing. And from the story of Zacchaeus, right, seeing people who need to be seen. And it's not all great. Let's have everyone over at our house every weekend. It's not. I feel like it today. But there are seasons where we do need to lean on other people and be able to be invested in by other people, not just always giving out. So thanks for sharing, Kim. Jackie, I'd love to hear your experience too.
I think similar to BJ, like it was modeled to me growing up. My parents had a unique job. They had a band.
Ooh.
And they traveled on a bus for like 15 years, and they were recipients of people's hospitality. So they would like sing in a church, and then they'd be like, anybody want to open up your home for the band? And you know, people would raise their hand, and they'd stay in people's homes from the churches. And sometimes they did give them more advance notice. It wasn't always like spur of the moment, but sometimes it was. And so I think they really experienced such hospitality, especially from the church, that when they finally, they weren't traveling as much on a bus and they had their own house, they always had space, always had room for people to come stay. And then at the time they weren't traveling, but the band would come and stay at our house all the time. So we always had tons of people in our house, either staying the night or coming for dinner, and my mom would always like cook so much. So that just felt so normal, like, oh, so normal to have people over for dinner, to have people over for Sunday lunch, and that's something that like I always wanted to do too. But then I feel like in college was a big part of like being a part of a table of people who were really different from me, and so I was part of a ministry called Seeds of Change. So it was actually the Catholic student ministry in our college at the time, and every weekend we would do big lunches, and we would just make a ton of food and go to this one park where all the homeless people hung out, and we would just say, we got lunch, and then we would pray with people, and it wasn't like a super like organized planned thing, and like sometimes we would like have some worship time, but like definitely met people that I'm like, oh, you are not like me. And then at the same time, a lot of these same people, certain apartment complexes were places where refugees were put. So there were a lot of African refugees, like in one apartment complex, and then there were just a lot of Mexican immigrants in another apartment complex. And so we would some people lived in those apartment complexes as well, but we would go and get to know those families, and It's funny too how you can think like, oh, I'm gonna come be hospitable to you, and you're blown, like you're like, I have no idea what hospitality is because America just has no idea. And they're just the level at which people give, especially when they have nothing to give, usually from other cultures, it's just another level. And then I think they've had opportunities to travel to other countries and like had that experience of like, come into my cardboard home and I will give you a little bit, everyone will have a little bit of one Coke, you know? And it's like, wow, you like had nothing and you still gave. And like, we can have these excuses of like, I have nothing to give. Or just like, we're gonna have dinner and it is rice and beans, but like that's what they had. And so it can really change your perspective to have those experiences. And then you come back and you're like, what am I doing? Like, I have so much to give. But then yeah, kind of like BJ too, it's like the single years of like lived in houses with a bunch of girls and we're like, we're gonna have so many people over, or like we always wanna have a room available if someone needs to stay the night. And then even in like early marriage of like having game nights all the time. And so in Memphis where I lived, kind of like a lot of my single years was involved with international students at a college as well. And so again, people who are like learning English for the first time, like they also, it's like, I don't know what the statistic is, but I could make up a number. But it's like a very low percentage of international students who come and study in the US are ever invited into an American's home. And so just a big thing that we would do would be connect people from churches to invite international students to come over and have a meal in their home. It's like so simple. Can you have someone over to your house who is, you know, studying to learn English here? And how big of an impact that was to them of like, you know, they've been eating microwave things or like stuff that's so different too in the cafeteria, and then to be invited over to someone's home is like can really meet a need for them. And so that always what hospitality seems to me is meeting some kind of need. And a lot of times it is food or it is drink. Sometimes it is a physical need like that or a bed or something like that. But it doesn't always have to look like that, and sometimes it can be meeting an emotional need while you're inviting them into relationship as well.
Yeah, so good. I love the diverse nature of everything that you shared, but even that what you finished with there was it doesn't have to always look the same. It doesn't have to be, oh, how many people have I invited over for Sunday lunch with a, you know, big, huge meal and decorations or themes, right? And that stuff is good. I think it brings us back to, you know, Mary and Martha, right? That it's not bad to work hard to make something really nice, but it's about presence. It's about being available. It's about being able to host people, whether you're hosting them on the spur of the moment or you're hosting them for a big event. But I think the challenge in this series is it's not so much about the big events and how do we make it amazing. It's how do we do it in everyday life. So if we flip back to the QR code there with the question, and I'll reveal everybody's answers. Can we go to that? Not that one, the one with the, there we go. Okay, so this is what you all said. I'm not proactive to make the invitation, busyness, fear of rejection, mess, expectations. Time is a big one. The bigger the word, the more people said it. Time or a messy house, comparison, feeling overwhelmed. Can't cook, two words, Uber Eats or YouTube. Making the time for it. I'm lazy, a little bit of honesty there. Insecurity, rejection. And being too much, yeah. And so there's a lot there, right? I'd love to hear from the panel a little bit more detail, whether you resonate with some of these words, and you don't all have to share, but just what's coming to the surface. What challenges or excuses do you personally face when inviting people to join your table? That's the second question in there. Anybody, whoever wants to go?
I'll just go again.
Yep.
I know it is funny, like all the seasons, how it really does look so different. And now I have a 3-year-old, Stella just turned 3. Wow. And so that is different and complicated when you're like, let's have people over, but she sits at the table for 0.5 seconds, you know, and then runs away and is like, come play with me. And it's like, we have people over, come sit at the table. So that, you know, that just looks different. And then in some ways it's like, you know, you invite people who also have kids over, and you're like, oh, your kids are the same too. Okay, great, this is wonderful. So kind of reaching out to, a different, or I guess the same demographic as me. But also, when it gets to the evening time and bedtime, and then I put my child to sleep, I just turn into a pumpkin, and I don't want to talk to anybody anymore either. So I think it is like, the amount of energy that you exert through the day, and then to think, oh, I have to talk to people when they come over to dinner too. That's like, I've become increasingly more introverted as I've gotten older, that is an interesting thing to experience as well. But there's so many excuses, or like, I don't want to clean my house, or I don't want to cook, or I don't want to talk to people, which is funny of just that whole inviting thing. But I think it is funny. It is interesting. I could be wrong, but there's no biblical evidence of Jesus inviting someone over to his house, which I know that's what we're talking about, is like inviting people to our table, but he was always the one invited. Yeah. Or he invited himself. Hey, I'm coming to your house tonight. I'm going to your house tonight. Isn't that so great? But then again, it's like, what kind of aroma did he have for people to be like, hey, come over to my house. Like, I want you to come over. And two, it's like, we are inviting people, sometimes legitimately and physically to our table, but also just like, he almost always met a need, and sometimes it was, feeding the 5,000 or healing people, but he like met some emotional need as he was inviting people into relationship. And so even if I am being invited over to someone's house, or like, what relationship do I have with my neighbors that they're like, oh, we want you over, versus like, we don't ever want you in our house. So kind of aroma. But there are lots of excuses that I can make. But when I think about just inviting people into relationship, it's an easier step than like having a bunch of people over for dinner. Like, okay, how can I invite people into relationship? It's easier.
Yeah, that's really, getting convicted by Jackie right now. Being like, what am I carrying? What aroma am I carrying? That's very good. I think there's, even like, first thing I think about is the head trash, all the disqualifiers that come into mind, right? And we find that in life in so many areas, something I've been working through recently a lot. But it's as simple as like, I would love to have you over, but the yard hasn't been mowed for 2 weeks, or like there's all like disqualifiers, or am I even like capable of like maybe this person that I would love to connect with, but maybe they're needing more care, and I just don't know if I have the capacity to really meet them where they need. What do I have to offer? Like, who am I a little bit? And so definitely deal with like the head trash at times that feels like you're disqualified, as much as easily as the little things at home. It's a mess, but also just within ourselves. Am I able to carry a conversation? Am I gonna be able to meet a spiritual need with them? So those are the challenges sometimes I face. And then I think also just like putting out there the eventually. I'll eventually get there. When I'm in a better place, I'll eventually, or even as simple as we live together, great, let's do that. And right, we've all had that. We're going to make plans with that person for like 5 years, and it just doesn't happen. And we've been meeting. But even putting the mindset of eventually, I think is something that is a challenge that we all face as well. That could be as simple as the space of singleness, or you're in early marriage, right? Because you just had a kid, or whatever it may be. When we get to a better place, we'll get there. And something, again, to kind of speak on my mom, she was always really good at like saying like, there'll always be an excuse to not do the thing, right? There will be an excuse to not go on vacation with your family. There's always an excuse to not get involved with that thing, or in this case, to really get into a relationship. There's always so if you think eventually, there's just gonna be something else then, that if you're still living in that space. And so I think having people that encourage you at times is really, really helpful. I think that right now there's a couple things I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think that in what we're talking about, right, there's no shortage of excuses. They're all valid at different times in different seasons. I think one question which kind of leads into the third question, which is almost, in many ways, it feels like a bit of a stretch. You have something to say? All right, Kim, go for it.
I have some important things to say about this. So I've had all the excuses that they've had. One very practical thing for meals that I really enjoyed this book was Cooking Once a Month. And it's like making meals ahead and putting them in the freezer, so you have the freedom to just spontaneously invite somebody over. But I think I want to speak a little bit to the people that are introverts, because I'm not an introvert, but have been married to and have a couple of children that are introverts. And for introverts, the thing that I've found out that probably the way I would think about time, but they do not get energy from being with people. That doesn't mean that they don't like being with people, but it depletes them from energy. For me, it's like when I'm around people, like I might feel really tired and overwhelmed, but I have somebody over and I feel energized and ready to go do stuff. But for introverts, I recognize that it takes a lot more intentionality to plan the time to do that. And so one of the things that I have been really impressed with my daughter, who's an introvert and probably has one of the busiest schedules that I know of, is on call every fourth night, is totally exhausted and is constantly being told how she's not measuring up, all at work, but has been able to maintain friendships and relationships and invest time in people in ways that I don't feel like I've done kind of like over the years. And so I want to say, like, if you're an introvert and this all sounds pretty overwhelming, you have something very valuable to offer, and I think it's in the depth of relationships. So it might be only one or two, but that's extremely valuable. And then the last thing was, this morning I was reading the scripture, and I thought this applies, because I think so often it's, well, maybe I want to do that, but I don't know where to get started, or I feel too overwhelmed, or it's not the right time for me. And I was just really struck that a lot of this is that we don't trust God. And so what impressed me about Jesus, in a lot of ways, he's very spontaneous. He's like, God's leading me today. Wherever the Spirit leads, I'll go. If you invite me to your house, I'll come over there. Oh, I'm coming to your house, because God, And that just seems really amazing to me as a person who likes to plan things. But the scripture in Proverbs 3 says, trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure out everything on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God, run from evil. And what really struck me was that it's like so often we don't do the very easy first step, which is, God, I submit this day to you, guide my steps, help me be present with whoever I come across. And that is a gift, like you're saying, your gift to other people.
Yeah, it's so good, Kim, and it's a heart posture. It's a heart posture at the beginning of the day. It's not looking at the practical things, the practical struggles, or even internal struggles. It's a heart posture. Am I making myself available? Am I available for people? And again, I just want to emphasize, like, it might not be a great season for you, but what are the little things? What are the small ways? Maybe it starts off not by welcoming people into your house for a big meal, but it just starts by making a few little outreaches, right? If you feel like maybe a little isolated, is it sending a text? Is it just not even sending a text when you need something, but just an encouragement to someone else? I think it's about how do we build up to this point? And in that, it is a progression. It is something we learn, but it's something that we practice. We like to use that language here, right? I'm practicing the way of Jesus. That starts with being with Jesus, but it extends to doing the kinds of things that Jesus did. And I think, I love what Jackie said. It might not be ever that you invite people into your space. You might go out for coffee. You might go somewhere else. You might do something with other people. But it's about what happened around the table that we read about and have been talking talking about in this series that is so impactful. That's where the life is. That's where being present is, and being available to what Holy Spirit might be prompting you to do. I think that it would be good to touch on this third question, even if for some of you this might even seem like a reach practice. But I'd say a lot of people would say, inviting friends and family, I'm pretty good with that. I'm okay with hosting people, or I'm okay with going to those kinds of events. Maybe even people we like. It can be a challenge to schedule it, but it's like, yeah, it's fine. I would say a lot of people in the room would say inviting people who are very different from me or challenge me or stretch me, I have no idea what to do about that, right? Or inviting neighbors where it's like, I'm not sure if I want to be around those people, let alone have them in my house or even go somewhere with them. What do you guys think about that whole concept? Because that is what Jesus demonstrated, right? When we think of Zacchaeus, the tax collector that no one wanted to be around, no one wanted to associate with. What are some thoughts around this? Because it is so clear. This isn't, the message takeaway isn't you should invite someone to your house, even though that is a good place to start. What about those who are different from us?
I don't know that I've done this very well, but I do think being curious, and so just asking people about what things are like for them. And I will say that, so I grew up not here, but in a town that was, the big difference, it was white, and the big difference was whether you're Protestant or Catholic. And so when all the things kind of happened with George Floyd, I asked some people at work that were black, I was like, do you really feel unsafe? And I was surprised at the answers. And so I just say, sometimes it's just a matter of being willing to explore what some of those differences are. And I think the other thing, like doing things for the least of those, so you can volunteer at the city mission, you can volunteer in the nursery, you know. So that's it.
That was a good one.
Anyways, I kind of lost my train of thought. So on this part, the make space for those who are different from us, I think so in my experience too, part of that is not only inviting, but again, kind of like the being invited. Like, I feel like international people that I've met are so much more welcoming. And when you get to a place where they're like, will you come to my house for dinner? And you're like, oh, okay. And then you go over and you see how, like, you are welcomed into their table and how their culture is different and other things, then you're like, oh, wow, I can really learn so much from them. And I feel like in a lot of ways to even welcoming to people to my table of like, oh, I have something that I'm gonna give you, come to my house, let me help you. I think I want to just change that attitude into like, you know, even though you're here at my house, but still how can I learn from you? And even though I'm providing the food, you know, I feel like you can teach me something. But it is hard. It's hard to be around people who are different or invite them over to your house if even having anyone over to your house feels hard. So then how do you do somebody who's different? Or it's like I've lived in different spaces, like I lived in Memphis for almost 10 years, and it's like 70% black population. There's a lot of refugees, a lot of Mexican population who live in Memphis. And it is you are just naturally around people who are so much more different from you, and church makeup looks really different too. So it's like feels a little different to be in a place where I'm like, oh, I really have to seek that out. Like that feels hard to seek it out or to know, or like, oh, what are those places, or like, you know, what is the international student population at W&J? And apparently I asked, and it's very low. I don't think there are very many international students from other countries. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you know?
I've heard different.
Oh, okay. But like, oh, yeah, how
But
do we
you might know
connect
more, so.
with international students at W&J, or like different things? And it's like, oh, I have to work harder to do it. It's not just like, oh, like everyone in my neighborhood looks different. Like, let's just have people, my neighbors over. anyways, I don't really know where I was going with that,
Yeah.
but it feels
I think
hard.
it's worth having that as a conversation, BJ. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. But I think that is probably not the stepping stone for most of you. But I think it's part of this conversation because that is the way Jesus came and flipped the script. Right? It's easy by some standards to say, let's have a party with people that I like, that are my friends. Right? We just recently was 4th of July. Right? It's easy to get those people together. But hanging out with people who are different, as Jesus modeled, is a challenge. BJ.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think, man, giving yourself opportunities to be uncomfortable or putting yourself in settings. And I think one of the great opportunities is like if you can go on like a mission trip somewhere and you just get into a different culture because you just realize, for one, like we're in some ways the minority of like what we think is normal. Once you expand kind of your view of things, and that's been something that shaped me so much. Was going to places where it's like, no, there's a lot more people here, and things are so different, and where I would, in my immaturity, think like, things are so weird, people are so different. Why aren't they more like me? It's like, well, no, step back for a minute, and man, I love being able to get back to Scripture. And you look at Romans 12, especially 9 through 21. It's just like this marks of a true Christian, right? And we see just like rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Like it goes on and on about these positions of orienting your heart, orienting your mind in a place of saying, okay, yeah, it is easier to be with those, and we have those. I don't want us to feel like just forget all your close relationships with people that are easy. Those are good. Those are things that lift us up. Those are things that spur us on to good works. All that is really good. But are you willing to put yourself to be curious about another person, right? Alyssa and I've had the great opportunity of having a young woman in our home that has a different background than us, but she didn't have anybody else, and so we've learned so much about her background, her family, and we want to learn, and even learning how to learn well, which that's kind of a weird, because sometimes we can have questions, it's just like, well, that was like not the right way to ask that question, so like even just being willing to get into deep relationship with people, to say, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable, it's harder to do, and even at times we don't agree, but to find that, man, there's so many nuances to relationship, it's so difficult, and I think we can do as big as, okay, we're going to try to reach out to international students at W&J, even if it is a smaller population. I think there's opportunity there, but I think sometimes proximity is still king. So your neighborhood, your neighbors, people that you have an easier reach to. That's something that's happened in our neighborhood. We have a neighborhood full of dog walkers. Dead serious. And like there's a guy that's out there at 6 a.m. every day. My dogs bark at him. And Alyssa and I go at like 7 at night. And there's other ones around, and that has created opportunity for us. We walk with another lady who is not a Christian. She's got some different worldview. She has different spiritual views. And so it's interesting to walk and talk with her and hear. But recently, it's like this is someone that I'm like, I have to be careful with, kind of like toting the line with her a little bit, but she even referenced to us recently, she walked all the way to our house and stood in our front yard for 30 minutes just chatting with us. She goes, I've gathered that you guys take your faith very serious, and I appreciate the way that you've got into a relationship with me, basically, is what she said. And I was like, God, it's so good. As much as I would like to be like, this is the truth, it's been good to, on dog walks in my own neighborhood, to reach to somebody that I probably wouldn't, in other spaces, like really press on my heart to bring in. And so finding those opportunities within your proximity to reach to somebody different.
Yeah, so good. Can we put the QR code on for questions? If anyone in the room has any questions, let's put that on the screen. And it's the same link, but just ask a question. I'll start by saying, for the people represented in the room who'd say, I'm really not sure about this, but I'm open a little bit. What advice would you have for them in terms of like a first step or a way to reach out? I know we've said some different things. What's something really specific that would say this actually has worked for me, or I know that this would be a great first step? Does anyone have any ideas on that?
I still think asking God and being sensitive to listening to and trusting that He's directing your steps. because I think that position is going to lead you to a lot of really strange and wonderful encounters. I think the other thing is being intentional about volunteering in some areas, I think would really be a good way.
With the nursery. I think, we have lots of barriers that keep us from having people over, and like a messy house can be one. And of course, I'm like, I don't want my house to be messy when people come over. But I have felt like when I've been over to someone's house and their house was not perfect, I felt more comfortable to be myself. And I was like, oh, you're not perfect either. Or like, you have half folded laundry on your couch. Or like, sometimes you go over to someone's house and you're like, maybe I should help you clean, which that's like another thing. We all have different things. But when that's my barrier of like, oh, this thing isn't how I want it to be, or I didn't do the yard work this week, or different things. But to know, okay, that one day I went over to someone's house and her house wasn't perfect, it was like, in some ways, I felt like I could be myself. And so sometimes when people come over, like, I purposefully don't make my bed. Like, so if someone, they're like, not like I don't make my bed every day, but I do try to make it up. But like leave something undone. So it and our house definitely never does look perfect. It never does. But like, be okay with I hope that my, imperfection helps other people feel more themselves, to be themselves in my house or whatever.
So good. Yeah. There's a lot of questions coming in here. I think the one that is probably most important, I know we're looking at the clock here, but pursuing relationship and community is difficult. Can you tell us why it's been worth it for you?
This is a great question. And it's something that I'm learning more. There would have been a time where I would have been like, it's the most important thing. It's because it's just so good, and it's great to have fun and doing this and that. And I'm learning more. It's so important because whenever you actually accept true relationship with someone that goes beyond the dinner meetups, goes beyond the events, goes beyond the casual conversations and coffee, but gets to a place where you actually can become a burden to one another, it's transformed. Like when you can be fully seen and you start to go, okay, yeah, like, right, we just watched Shrek the other day. It's like, onions have layers, right? It's like you actually start to get to like the real inner layers of you, and because we have that part where we get a couple layers back, and then all of a sudden we go, okay, that's enough, because you're about to see the real me, and that's a mess. But God is wanting us to work through, and He's wanting us to be able to actually deal with those things and bring them to the surface, and it is so hard, and it has been the best experience for me, even though it's been incredibly difficult, to have people that say, BJ, we like that person that's in there, and we want to help transform it to look more like Jesus and for you to become the person that He created you to be. So for me, that's why it's been so deeply important to say yes to these deep relationships. And then it allows me to become the person that actually becomes the better version, to reach out to those that are more difficult, to reach out to those that are marginalized, or whatever else. I become that person that can actually do that now and start to get rid of that head trash, things like that.
That's what I'd say.
That's what Kim would say. Another question. How can I overcome the thought that what I have in my hand is not enough? Right? I think that reality, we saw that from the answers that were submitted. I'm not enough. My space isn't enough. I don't have enough to give what people might need. How do you begin to overcome that? What principles do you live by? Or maybe scriptures? Anything that come to mind?
What comes to mind is scripture where it said the little boy that had 2 loaves and 5 fishes, or 2 whatever it was. He gave it to God, and God multiplied it. And so I think it becomes, I'm finding more and more of life every single day is a trust issue. Do I trust God? Do I trust God is leading me? Do I trust God is providing for me? Do I trust God will provide for whoever I invite into my house? And if I don't trust God, why don't I trust God? And so getting back to the advantage of being in small group is, I think the biggest advantage is because we lie to ourselves all the time. I lie to myself, and it's when you're in relationship with other people that you have to face reality.
And it's never enough, whatever you have. At least sometimes I feel like, I'm like, I want more, I want more. But yeah, if you feel like what you have isn't enough to give, it's not. No matter how much we have, it's not enough. And God is the one who fills in the gap. And at the same time, though, like, yeah, whatever we have is enough. And to rest in that and know, like how I felt so welcomed by people who have had so little, that it's not of how much you have, but a posture of your heart. And we can give with whatever we have. And that's often when we see God do miracles, and when God see do big things, when you're like, I don't have enough, I have the loaves and fish, and God meets us and does the rest.
Yeah, so good. That place when he leads us to that place of surrender, to say, what I have in my hand is not enough, but God, I trust you. I have faith in you. Let's give these guys a hand.